because of her father's passing away.
Yes.
And she only sent it me now, so I haven't gone through. So I don't think we should include it in tonight's meeting. If there's anything of immediate importance, I will share it with the whole group. Otherwise, we'll go through next week.
Yeah. Wonderful. So let's wait 3 more minutes. So if someone else is joining. So Thomas is excused for tonight. He just traveled back from Costa Rica to Germany over the weekend. And so he had also barely sleep and had some other topics on his plate tonight. But we already had a conversation with Herman and Waynand this noon.
Yeah, you could actually see that he was quite tired.
Yeah.
It was quite evident.
When things are starting to get slower, then that's the best sign of being tired. I feel also the same this today.
I've got a yoga mat in my office, and when I feel tired, I lay down for 20 minutes.
That's good tactics.
But at my age, you need to use anything that keeps you kind of alive and alert.
Sure. Yeah.
Tendo, tell us about your meeting with the big man last week.
No, I'm not at liberty to talk about it. Sorry.
What a pity.
You had to sign a document. Don't share any word.
No.
Just kidding.
Yeah, I must admit one thing. He confuses me more and more.
So you mean the president?
Yes.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have had different expectations, and he's not living up to all of those.
Well, not only that, I think even his statements, his recent statements, are very different from the way he acts.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say.
No, it is true. I think it's managing an environment that is very, conflictual and different interests and so on. And I don't think he's managing to put it together. We all thought he would, and I think it's not getting that way.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just going to forward the Zoom link to Vuyo. She is asking for the Zoom link.
Okay, good. Then let's wait for her and then we start.
I've got a basic question, if that's okay.
Go ahead. Sure.
What does Bundu mean in the sense of Limpopo?
Bundu?
Yeah.
It's rural area.
Ah, okay. Like an administrative
In what
area?
sentence?
Okay. Well, I saw a document that.
If you can refer to someone that lives in the Bundus, for example, it's someone in a very rural area, not close to a town.
Ah, okay. Oh, so it's from the English word. Okay.
But I don't think it specifically applies to Limpopo. It applies to any upcountry area, Waynand, am I right?
I'm not sure. I don't know if it's in all provinces, but it's a very commonly used phrase in Limpopo.
Yeah, in English you'll say you live in the sticks, so it's the same thing.
Yeah, fun.
Tendu, I'm so happy to meet you. So while we're waiting, I've heard so much about you. So happy to meet you.
Pendo, I said nothing about you. Rika's lying.
Sorry,
Ginju,
who is this Lorica? Is that how you say your name?
yeah, Buti, Rinyako Bulela Lewena, they've said a lot.
Oh, okay, catch up. I hope it was good stuff.
All good stuff. Lorica is our marketing manager at Agricologist.
Oh, nice to meet you, Lorica.
Likewise.
Right.
Good. So I'd like to give you a quick heads up on the stuff Thomas and I am currently working on. And then I would suggest that we continue the conversation as Hermann has announced on the different perspectives and thoughts on the challenges of the prototype community in what was the name again? Sorry, in
Wembe district.
Wembe.
Wembe.
Yeah, so I forgot that for a moment. So currently, Thomas and I, we are working with someone from Kenya to create this short explainer video about Motherland. Yeah, the first try was not so well as we intended it. And so we are now in the second round, and we have a new videographer, yeah, who is now drafting the story and the first mood boards. We hope to see something this week, and then we move on with that. And Anesu is supporting us with music, yeah, and hopefully we find someone like Kiptu, who is in Nairobi, or Elizabeth to speak in the storyline. So the video will be around 90 to 120 seconds, so 2 minutes. Yeah, so a very short movie to explain Motherland to be as easy to understand as possible for everyone who could be involved, whether this is someone from a community, but also from a perspective of an investor, to really understand what Motherland is all about. Then I have worked last week on writing a short pitch storyline and reducing the amount of slides, because in the last presentation I held at Gita, which should now be online on YouTube, or should be online soon. So it's right now for review, to have a look for every speaker, and it will be published on YouTube soon via the Gita channel. And this pitch was, I had a lot of time, but I also used more than 20 minutes, yeah, which is way too long to send it to people. And I'm currently have reduced it to approximately 10 minutes. Yeah, and also throw out a lot of slides, yeah, which then will be more on diving deeper if there is any further interest on the presentation of Motherland. So that's taking some time from my side, and then Thomas and I have found someone with kind of a good fundraising experience, yeah, in the nonprofit space, and also doing projects in Namibia. Yeah, so he's also very keen on Africa and moving something here. And we had the first sessions with him to have a look at our fundraising strategy so that we reduce or accelerate the learning curve regarding the fundraising. Yeah, so this is also moving forward. Good. So that was update from my side. Any updates from the others?
Yeah, I'd like to just stress one point, which I think we should always have on top of our mind when we think and talk about Motherland. I think we need to be absolutely clear that our prime target is not agriculture. Our prime goal is to support communities to become healthy, self-sustaining, and self-reliable.
Yeah.
And agriculture for us is a basis for laying the foundation which the community can build on. I think that is something we really need to have, as I said, in the foreground, be aware of when we talk about motherland. Because sometimes maybe we give the wrong impression. And I'm not diminishing in no way the importance of agriculture. Without, we wouldn't be able to do what we intend to do.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, Herman. You know, I was always fighting for that we get reminded on that. So as you said, there is a strong connect and link to agriculture, and we cannot do that without agriculture. But just to remind you that our belief from the research and the conversations we had done, and also our own understanding of how markets are developing, it's always the demand that triggers the supply. Yeah, and if you want to build functioning ecosystems and markets, then it's really important to look at the post-harvest value chain, as we always say. Yeah, but that also includes the connection and the conversations and the work also with the farmers, no doubt about that. Yeah, but we want to give them the chance to sell their produce at a higher price. Yeah, or going into the value chain and processing some of their produce to selling it also to a higher price and serving the community properly, and everything that is needed to achieve that is, so to say, what we see with the post-harvest value chain. Yeah, and this is our main focus. Yeah, but definitely, as Herman said, there are necessarily interlinks to the farmers, and there will also be work with the farmers.
Well, it is very simple that if you consider that those communities are in more remote rural areas, then agriculture is the natural kind of catalyst for that kind of development. Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anyone else want to update on any topic or want to inform us about anything? Otherwise, I would like to hand over to Herman that he gives a quick introduction about the status of the conversations with the farmers and Wembe community and Chivahase Agridam, and I can also open up the table we have started last week in our conversation. And it was just Wayne, Herman, Thomas, myself, and Buyu, yeah, who started talking through the table, and I will opening it up. But maybe Herman, you'd like to start to share your thoughts here.
Well, I think most of you were present when I did report back on the trip I did, and the visits and the conversations, which on the one full day where we had meetings, excuse me, and conversation was also supported by Lorica and Wayland. And the way I see these were the very first steps into establishing contacts through the help of Vuyo, who really did an admirable job before she even joined Chivahase Agridam, because her connections are absolutely fantastic with the farmers. I mean, we drove through areas and everybody was waving at her, knowing who she was, and when we stopped, people talked to her. What I think becomes important is that we now, and I appeal, we have not only recorded all the conversations, but we have transcribed it as well, since reading is a bit faster than listening. And if you kind of can skim over those documents and come forward with questions, ideas, etc., observations, that would be valuable, because we do need to widen our approach.
Yeah,
I don't think I need to go into any further details at the moment.
So what we did last week, so Herman, Wayland, and also Lorica came up with some challenges, yeah, which you currently see on the shared screen. And then we went through all of them and discussed the potential impact for the community, so for the development towards self-sufficiency and self-reliance of the community. Yeah, so which you see here in here. And then we just took the ones with the 4s and 5s and asked what is the feasibility of realizing this impact, yeah, and try to somehow get a measurement on that. So we also looked, is it really post-harvest value chain or is it pre? Yeah, so because we want to focus on the post-harvest value chain. So, but if the pre is some kind of an integral part of it to make a post-harvest viable, then yes, we have to have a look at it. Yeah, and we said, okay, is it more a positive effect on Chivahase or on the Wembe community? Yeah, so, and by going through that, we identified the first challenges, yeah, that were especially based on the conversations Herman and Waynand and Lorica, you were also with the
Yes, she was.
And so what you identified, and now I think it's the topic of defining more, but as Vuyo is not here in the room, I would rather have a look at it and also have the perspective, for example, of Kiptu and Tendo, and maybe we can add more thoughts and perspectives on the challenges and the impact and feasibility from your perspective.
Sebastian, I want to add one thing for those who weren't around, particularly Tendo, Sibongile. The farmers we met were primarily macadamia, avocado, and lychee farmers. I had one meeting with a cash crop farmer, but it wasn't a strong emphasis. And that's something we possibly need to explore more during a next visit into the area. So what we're reflecting on at the moment has been based on the input from those farmers and not from cash crop farmers.
Yeah, I mean, if
Just
I can, sorry, please go.
No, you can go. I want to just ask a quick question. So the farmers you met, these are in addition to Vuyo's own farm, which I thought at some point it was a banana farm or something.
Yeah, they farm bananas, avocados, and lychees, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and 5 hectares of cash crops.
Yeah,
Okay.
It is a subtropical area, so I think that is the reason why. Herman, I think if I look at all the challenges, it'll be very generic for a lot of rural areas in South Africa and maybe in Africa. So I really like the idea that we cluster them and we can prioritize them, but these are by far and large the same issues that you will find in northwest where I live. So I think it's a very good thing that we have jotted down the challenges, and I'm glad that Tendu, Kiptu, and the rest of the team are going to give some input and insight.
Rika, you're quite right, but there's one thing we need to consider, which is the biggest food loss is in agriculture itself. In other words, about 1/3 of food harvested, by the time it gets to the table, about 1/3 has been lost. And 50% of that loss is on the farms. But that doesn't apply to those farmers we saw. That applies more to the cash crop farmers. Because that would be, let's say if we would look at cash crops specifically, one of the biggest impacts we could create is by identifying why is that loss on the farm and how can it be prevented. Whereas the picture here, as I said, is primarily for macadamia, avocados, etc.
But is it not also relevant, Herman? Maybe the loss is not because of actual losses of food, but it's the losses of potential income. I mean, that Susan we spoke to earning about 1/16 of what she should be earning if she gets her crop up and her is sold to the right market. Is that not the same? It's not just about loss due to not having cold room facilities. It's also loss of opportunity because they're being sort of they're forced to sell their product to a market because they're uninformed.
Yes, but but the steps to correct that are different. In Susan's example, it is inverted commas fighting for a fairer market price. Whereas if we go back to the cash crops that are lost on the farm itself, you can, whatever you do to the price is irrelevant if you don't get the loss down from what they actually are. That's the only, as I said, the method of hiding it or preventing them or correcting them would be different. Does it make sense, Wayne?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just want to, it's not just the loss because of lack of facilities. It's also the loss because of, how can I put it, lack of access to the right market, lack of access to the right people and the right knowledge, and knowing what they could earn.
Yeah.
They're just selling to the first person that comes around to the farm to make them an offer.
Could it also not be that the people around the same area grow the same type of produce at the same time,
Absolutely.
thereby creating an oversupply of the produce generally in the area, but also if even within one farm, if you are growing stuff that you want to harvest all of it at the same time, then you've got too much stuff to harvest as opposed to probably doing a staggered approach in your growing program so that you don't have the entire field planted at the same time. And you could harvest regularly, but small quantities.
Yeah, that's 100% their problem in that area with lychees. All of their lychees in that entire area come in at the same time and they literally can't give it away for free. So that's where we've got to find a solution to find a byproduct that we can process the lychees and send the lychees to that industry rather than everyone throwing their lychees away.
Simbongile.
Thank you, gentlemen. And I just want to echo the challenge that is faced by most farmers, where there's echoing Tendo's statement, because if we are all growing lettuce, but we are not collaborating to say, let's service an offtake, it becomes a challenge, because now everyone is trying
Now we lost you. You're breaking away.
to sell to different people, but we don't have, we're challenged. So I think with collaboration with farmers, especially where they'll look at, can we have within the value chain, people who look at market access, because the loss that we see most of it, everything is ready and ripe, and now where do we take it to?
You both
Because
quite
there's no
correct.
fixed offtake, you see. So I think farmers need to actually look at who within the farming network can actually do the marketing, so that not everyone is a grower, but they should be the ones that go say, let's look at market access. and then they come in, and others can be aggregators, because it helps where aggregation is there to say we'll take from you and go and supply our markets that we have, especially in the rural areas, because like if it's a season for like tomatoes, you find that there's a flooding of tomatoes, and it's costly to take them to the normal markets that we have. And also in the market, the price becomes a challenge also, because when there's excess, it's not easy to get the right price. You see, so it comes back to organizing themselves within groups to say who does what. I'll cite an example with us here in Gauteng. What we did, we formed a collaboration with Kula. Kula has an app that profiles all our farms, and then we as farmers put in what we have in our farms, and we agree on the price, and they come in as aggregators. So I know that whatever I've grown, it's going to be picked up, and we have agreed on the price. I don't have a challenge with wastage. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. So I think this is already a nice way into the solution. Yeah, so who are the aggregators or the access makers to the markets? Yeah, and so I've another question regarding the Wembe community. So we were talking right now about cash crops, which is vital when it comes to enhance the value creation. So, but what I would be interested, is there any estimation you can make about the share of the average farm on what is on subsistence, so serving, so to say, food to your family, growing food and serve your family, and what's the percentage you can grow cash crops, yeah, to make an income for a living?
Sebastian.
Sebastian, on a follow-up to that, I think what happens, I don't know, I'll just give you a model that I designed with myself. I take 10% to be for family, and then 10% goes to my social responsibility, because I'm surrounded by like a children's home, a church, and an informal settlement. And then the 80%, that's when we put it aside for actually making profit out of it. So even if we overgrow what we have, we know that 10% it's for home use and also for social impact, because there's homes surrounding us that I give vegetables to as part of our donation to them for their kitchens. So when doing your model, I think 80% should be the one that is committed to saying, I'm going to make sure that 80% goes for my profit side. So that they still have food to eat as farmers, and they still have food for their surrounding communities, because in building communities, we don't want a situation where you're in a community, you are a farmer, but people are starving next door. So that impact should be there. They should know, here's a farmer, those who don't have, they can come, and those that can afford to buy, they can come and buy.
Yeah, because if you don't starve, you can take responsibility somewhere else for yourself or other members of the community, right? So
can I share what's actually happening in the Wembe area?
Yeah, please.
The cash crop farmers I saw are all farmers that have gone beyond this, subsistence farming.
Yeah.
I mean, the one guy we met, he had 10 hectares under cultivation and another 15 hectares nearby. And but the chief has started on the following concept. People are allocated one hectare of land on which to build their houses. And the rest is now dedicated to farming, number one, for their own consumption, and whatever surplus is then collectively being sold into the market. So you have got subsistence farmers or people who subsist by growing their own food on a small piece of land, namely 1 hectare. Then you have the actual farmers who have 10 hectares and more.
Thank you, Herman. So, and then maybe another look as we are talking about the post-harvest value chain. So we have talked about the actual food losses on the farm, which obviously need to be reduced. Yeah, and then the food losses along the chain towards the fork. Yeah, which is another 6 of the total food produce. And so, and my question is, so what is happening on the side of the value chain that is increasing the value of the produce? Yeah, so meaning processing and adding value to a produce, I don't know, making something out of the macadamia, avocado, you don't have not so much. You could do avocado oil, yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, that would be enhancing the value out of the produce. So anything happening here on the site already, or is there any opportunity in the Wembe community?
I can't answer the question specifically for Wembe. I can comment. I attended quite a few webinars organized by that organization in Switzerland, which I shared the link with you, Sebastian. And their investigation last year was totally focused on the post-harvest value chain and on agricultural aggregators, etc., etc. And the verdict was that there is a tremendous shortage of processing facilities in Africa in general. And Weinand may correct me here, but I believe it also, to a very large extent, applies to South Africa too.
Definitely does. Okay, Lorica.
Yeah, I really do agree with you that I think there is a huge shortage of processing facilities, not only in the Wembe district, but in South Africa overall in the more rural areas. And we saw that with our visit to the Wembe farms.
I do think, however, that there is an issue which we, the aggregation story is quite an important one. People tend not to want to work together, and that is a problem. Government responded to the shortage of this processing facility in some areas by building them, and there are quite a number of places that we know of where they've just become white elephants. You know, if you take Herman, we went to see Tumi's place. You know, you can see that such a facility had been built about 10 years ago, and they just are not using it, and pretty much because everybody wants to work on their own in silos. So, you know, part of the work requires us to try and work with communities that are either ready to work together, or we should have a facilitation process to try and talk about the importance of collaboration rather than working in silos. I found that, you know, even in Wembe, there is I'm told there are quite a number of processing facilities, especially for, you know, cash crops, as well as, you know, tomatoes and a number of things like those, which really are not being used.
That's such a pity.
Yeah.
Tendo, you're 100% correct, and that was one of the points I really drilled deep into. My question was, even on the very first day I was at Chivazi Akredam, Vuyo had arranged for a young farmer to be the first person to meet. And he farms macadamia and lychees and I think avocados as well. But one of the questions I really, I said, why don't you guys work together? is that a question of trust? And I actually, and I think Lorica and Wayland can back that up, when we had the meeting with a bigger group on Wednesday, the general attitude was actually quite open for cooperation. That's why I said, okay, if for example, Chivase Akredam would become the hub for, or the center for, yeah, the hub for such a kind of cooperation, people were extremely open to that. They see the problems, yes, but they also see the possibilities by working together.
Mm. But is there any verdict of that, why it has not happened? Is it trust? Is it being focused on what I do with my own hands because I don't trust the community, or what is the reason? Because it seems like a low-hanging fruit, yeah, especially when the facilities are there, but they are not utilized.
I think it's putting the wrong people in charge of those facilities, my opinion on what we see here. I mean, we've got an entire industrial area that is linked under our municipality with massive buildings for processing, and very little of what happens there is driven by anything to do with government. It was built and established and left. They haven't put the right people in place. They need people that's got an interest in the industry, and they need to involve the community. And that's the only way they're going to make a success out of it, is if they hand it to the community and the private sector to manage together.
Mm-hmm.
I think Vuyo is possibly the most competent person to have an opinion. She was present in the conversations, but she had been in contact with these people for many years before. And I believe she's raised her hand, actually.
Ah, it's Vuyo here now. Okay. Hello, Vuyo. The floor is yours.
I'm sorry to join you late. I was struggling. What I've learned is that the problem is ownership. When a pack house or any facility is owned by a group of Black people, I'm saying Black, I'm also Black, so I know how our mentality and how we do things and the culture and all that. When something is owned by a group of Black people, at some point there's this mistrust, at some point there's corruption, at some point one person is pulling the other direction, at some point there's theft and all that. Yeah, that's the what I've learned from all the projects that I've visited around here in Limpopo and also Mpumalanga.
So who should have ownership and leadership in those facilities to utilize it to their full potential? Who should that be?
Like here, I think Chivase Akredam should have that ownership, so that they are responsible, fully responsible in making sure that the hub it works and it's successful.
Is that practically possible that Chivase Akredam could have the ownership, or is it state-owned and there has to be a transaction to you, or is it really necessary that you own it, or you get just, let's say, a long-term contract with the current owner to use it, or let's say it's in charge of Chivase Akredam, but it's in the end owned by the community because the whole community would like to profit from it and should be part of that. So I think there are different models of governance. Yeah, and I think we need to ask, and this is what I cannot say, what are the possibilities, yeah, due to the current ownership and structures that are already in place?
Sebastian, I think these are part of, I mean, what you raise is very important, but these are part of the questions we have to explore further.
Yeah.
Because as I said, my understanding and the response I saw during our conversation, it wasn't a question of lack of trust. I think it's creating the right infrastructure, the right concept. Like we discussed it earlier today, that is really what, in my personal opinion, needs to happen. That people can visualize the whole thing from a complete point of view. In other words, that they see the complete picture, what eventually the outcome could be of our facilitation.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think this is really right now the process of drilling deeper and understanding, and that would be, for example, just with the pack house or processing facilities. And so how would be a feasible setup would look like, yeah, and what is required, and what is Motherland able and entitled to do to make that work in the end. Yeah, and so because if this is a bottleneck or this is a low-hanging fruit, we need to understand how to solve that Gordian knot, so to say, yeah, and figure out how to make it work. And so I think that's a very interesting and important discussion.
I think you need a sword to cut the Gordian knot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so. Okay, but I think that this is definitely a topic for further exploration. Yeah, so how that might look like, probably we need to think about some ideas and then derive hypotheses. Yeah, and going into further conversations with the community and obviously with Vuyo and so on and so forth. So what would be interesting, because as Kiptu wrote it down, and probably you have all experienced such white elephants in Africa. Yeah. So is there any best practice how to deal with those white elephants? Yeah, and utilizing those facilities better than it's done right now. So do you know anything?
Well, if you like, I have some ideas, but I think what is critical is actually this is again a co-creation process. One would need the using the example Tendo mentioned earlier with Tumi's place. One would have to explore there why don't they use it, and what induce them to use it, because as Tendo mentioned, it's been there for 10 years. I've seen other places even much bigger where we have a similar issue. And but as I said, we can talk about it until we blue in our faces. We would need to have these conversations with the people who avoid using facilities that have been installed. There must be a reason, even if it's an illogical reason.
No, there's definitely, I think there are quite a number of sociological reasons, and they're difficult to resolve because many of them are quite embedded in society. So I'm just thinking aloud now that one possible one is the nature of ownership of assets. In the rural base, you have a communal ownership of assets through a chief, through the traditional leadership structures that are in place there, who enforces that kind of communal ownership and so on through whatever governance structures that they've got. And I think that as soon as you have a structure that's created out of that, such as a cooperative or communal property associations, as has been done in other environments. People don't know how to react and how to engage in those. Now, the chair of the communal property association or a communal cooperative would want to behave like they are a chief, but they're not necessarily, they don't have the authority of a chief, so people don't own up to it. But because the structure of leadership is such that it is run in those terms, I think that there's a bit of confusion of roles in some instances, and people's response to that becomes a problem. So typically in some of the NGOs that I've been involved in, and I mentioned CPA, which is a communal property association, because I was involved in trying to deal with getting people to understand governance issues and how they could benefit by collaborating as opposed to working on their own. It was really just an understanding of the role of leaders, like a chair of an environment like that, vis-a-vis the chief. So you establish a cooperative on a village which is governed by a chief. The chief feels quite entitled to be involved in it and making decisions outside of that structure, whether or not they are involved in it or not. As soon as money flows in, they want to get involved, but they're not party to the structures because they're not elected and people don't respect them. Before you know it, 3 years have gone past. People are fighting over who does what, who shouldn't do what, and so on and so on. So I think that, I think it's a sociological problem, especially in South Africa, I think. I don't know if it exists elsewhere. I would imagine so. But in South Africa, I think that's an issue to deal with. That's the one part of the problem which we can, I don't know whether we can tackle or not. I also think that obviously education is an issue. South Africa is a very complex society. Obviously, we've got young people that are growing without apartheid, but those who grew under apartheid have never had ownership of valuable assets, and therefore don't know how to manage valuable assets, because they were deprived of those or stripped out. Those who had them were stripped of them. So there is a historical backlog of understanding future and value and how to build it and so on and so on. And I think it's an important issue to look at. So especially in farming, most Black people were farm laborers who were exploited as slaves pretty much. To ask them to now come and communally work towards owning a farm and running it effectively without any hiccups and fighting amongst themselves and so on is quite a difficult thing. I'm not saying it's impossible. I think it's very possible. But I'm just mentioning things that we should just be aware of at the back of our minds. I think there are relevant issues. Now, the question is, who should be dealing with those societal backlogs and negativities that exist? Certainly not structures like us, I think, because that's really almost an education exercise, a re-education exercise. But it is a societal problem that has got to be tackled. So to introduce a project in a community that is fractured, as much as the way I describe it, I think requires a lot of patience, requires a lot of dealing with things that may not be that normal. In other words, have a business plan and let's get it done and so on may not be the only way to deal with it to get it implemented. Maybe to also find a way of addressing the societal challenges that I've just mentioned only two, but I think they're probably quite a number.
Thank you, Tendo. Herman.
Yeah, Tendo, I fully agree with you. Therefore, I think this is one of the not so low-hanging fruits. It's definitely very high up in the tree. So what I think how to overcome that gradually is by creating positive examples. Let's say we come to one simple solution with reasonably positive effect and impact. Then people need to see in order to be convinced, and not through words, but through what's happening on the ground. And if we can get that going, which I see possible, then the socio-economic and socio-political kind of issues will still be there, but they will become weaker and weaker through living positive examples.
Absolutely agree.
Sorry?
No, I'm saying I absolutely agree that I think we've got to find those low-hanging fruits that will create positivity, and people can see that through collaboration, there's there's progress, there's better life, and so on. Yeah.
You also, I mean, that's one reason why we have a prototype, in order to make that work, at least to an extent, and then start. If we have to taking people there and say, look, that's what we have achieved over the last 12 months. You're interested and keen to walk along a similar road or to create a similar path, we're willing to facilitate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so probably to sum this up, so how to create kind of experience of the possibility of opportunities. Yeah, so it's in your hand, you do something, and the unexpected is possible. This is not solving the governmental problems, yeah, of ownership, etc. But so how to unleash this type of thinking and also confidence in your own work. So I know that sounds quite, let's say, visionary or utopic, yeah. But somehow this is probably should be part of that, yeah. Seeing it's possible, yeah. We can achieve something, and we can do it with our own hands and minds. Yeah.
I also believe that in Chief Chivazi, we have a person who is willing to walk that path. He might be, the way he talks to me and what I learned through Vuyo is he's very open-minded in order to uplift communities that are within his reign, so to speak. So we may have, we may be lucky that we may have somebody to work with who is a lot more open-minded than what we've seen in KwaZulu-Natal, for example.
Okay, good. So as this session comes to an end, so I think that for me it was a very valuable discussion, and I think Herman, it's now on us to think about how to deeper understand that, and if there is a possibility to set up this kind of experience journey and governance, yeah, to make that work in November, yeah, and what we can learn out of this and create an example for a better utilization of the existing facilities. And as I understood it, so this is probably one to do we need to make. And I'd really like to have this conversation also on the other impactful topics, yeah, which we see it needs some time, but I think it's really valuable. And then there will be some point in time where we also need to connect it, because if we are talking about education, which we had also today, yeah, the question is, okay, where and how do we, on which topics we educate the people, yeah, because it's the area of education is probably quite wide, and we need to select where to start with education, for example, and that would be then the sense making in a way of how to connect, yeah, all the dots that we see and boil it down to the things that really matter for the prototype.
Look, I mean, we're lucky enough to have an educational expert or an organization that totally focuses on education in a fairly wide sense. I mean, I understand from Wayne that last year they run trainings for other countries in totally different areas. So what I'm trying to say is they have a high-tech base to operate from, and have been active in that area for years now. I think, again, Sebastian, I think important is writing a Wembe-specific kind of, or painting a Wembe-specific picture.
Yeah.
And take it from there.
Absolutely. So
it's something I will spend a bit of time on this week to try to get something going, but I will also paste everyone for contributions.
Yeah. Wonderful. So if nobody has to add anything at the moment, I would close this session. I would thank you for all your insights, especially Herman and Tendo, Sibongile. That was really insightful. And as Herman said, so I think we really need to draw a story of a mission, what we want to accomplish, and we believe in what we can accomplish for the Wembe community, including Chivahase Akadam as a partner. Yeah, and then we need to come up with a path of solutions, for the prototype, and that would be the next steps. And probably we are going to spend the time on our Monday calls, drilling deeper and getting all your minds on board. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Go well. Bye.
Take care.
Evening, bye.